Okay, without much further ado, I want to get into this video on what Hut Cartel calls the Sheriff Bounce. Why do we call it Sheriff Bounce? Well, we've been doing this for 2 or 3 months now, and the person who discovered it for us was none other than our own the Sheriff. We gave it the name Sheriff Bounce, and we've been using it for a while. And Fenkar made a good video on it recently that I just wanted to try and add to, because I think perhaps there's a little more to it than he was able to demonstrate in his very quick video on the subject. So let's get into practice mode. I'm going to use practice mode. I know there are nerfs that are mostly to do with burst activation cost and do not really affect the bounce whatsoever. And that's one of the reasons the bounce is so important in the current state of the game, especially at the top levels competitive play. Because when you're using the bounce, there's no additional boost activation cost penalties, because you've already boosted your one time, and that's all you need. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, I'm going to boost, put my power to 0, boost, and I'm doing a dead drift here, yeah? When I hit shift again, my direction of travel changes, and I start to go back in the other direction. Let's do it again. Alright, dead drift. Yeah, and I bounce back the other way without hitting boost again. I just lift off my drift button and then immediately reapply. Yeah? So we call that a Sheriff Bounce. Fenkar called it multi-drifting. I strongly suspect that there are many, many teams at the top level who are doing this already, either knowingly or unknowingly. There'll be people who are effectively chaining their boost drifts together in such a way that they think that they're doing multiple boost drifts, but are actually just bouncing. It's entirely possible. And from the games that we've played recently, especially, we know there are other teams out there like Cavern's Angels, who I think Fenkar discovered it from, who are definitely moving in ways that suggest they know all about this bounce technique. So, you can do one bounce, sure. You can do multiple bounces, yeah? And you can use that to get really ridiculously close to the hull without hitting it entirely. So it's really useful for hiding around the superstructure of a ship, you know, and just being generally unpredictable and hard to follow in your movements. Yeah? So the important thing is just list off your drift key and then hit it again. And I should say, you can't do this on console. You can't have a separate drift key on console, and that is something that really needs to be changed. I think that something has to be patched about this. Personally, I think this is a great technique and it adds to the skill ceiling. I don't think it's broken like dead drifting. Pinballing is broken. So when you pinball, you boost at each end, basically, of whatever drift you're doing. And it's that change in acceleration, that massive, I should say, change in speed, that high acceleration, that makes the pinballing so difficult to hit, because the server and the client are struggling to predict where you're going to be. Now, in a bounce, your acceleration is constant. That is to say, your speed declines at a constant rate. I'll show you. So, there's a drift. Here are multiple bounces. All through those bounces, my speed continues to decelerate at a constant rate. Yeah? So because I'm not accelerating differently, I should be just as easy to hit were it not for the fact that it's physically hard to follow me and follow the direction of travel. Which actually I think is fine. I think that's a skill ceiling, and not something that should be removed from the game. Clearly some kind of client-side patch is going to have to be made, but I think what they should do is let console players have a separate drift button like everyone else. You'll have noticed many of the top players have switched to, and this includes within Hut Cartel, have switched to using joystick and keyboard, or they are using a controller where they have essentially macroed a separate button to drift on their keyboard. So they're effectively still using the keyboard. And the reason we're all using the keyboard as the input device is because you can have a separate drift button and it's really powerful. And it's much easier to do power management as well. Think of that what you will. I think what we'll do now is I'm going to show you kind of where you can take this technique to, like how far you can go with it. So I'm in a defender. Again, in practice mode, it's not the subject of the most recent nerfs, but all that really means to me is that I can maintain more boost at the moment because I'm not hitting my... it lets me boost multiple times, so I can demonstrate the technique to you. In terms of the nerfs affecting the bounce or multi-drifting, it doesn't at all, because I'm not hitting my boost activation cost. I'm just hitting drift multiple times, right? So I can hit my bounce multiple times within a turn. That's important, because it means I can do a standard turn more effectively. And you know, that tightness of turn is insane. You can't do that normally. Then the other thing is the number of dead drifts I suppose you can do in a defender. So I can do probably 5 or 6 meaningful changes in direction in one multi-drift, bounce, whatever you want to call it. Which is crazy. Basically, I can continue to do it as long as I have momentum. What does that mean in terms of being able to use this technique effectively? Well, it means that I don't have to immediately chain all my bounces together. I can drift a really long way, especially in something like a defender, and then change my direction of travel wherever I want to along that path, as long as I still have sufficient momentum. I can drift all the way down the length of the Star Destroyer, and then only at the very end go, maybe I'll change my direction. Let's have a go. So let's just get to the tip here. We'll go down the Star Destroyer. Yeah, and past it a little bit even. And then I'm going to start drifting back the other way. So if I'm doing a strafing run or whatever, you know, I can strafe all the way down the length of the Star Destroyer. Pow, 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 pow. Yeah. And then start strafing back the other way down the Star Destroyer. It's frankly insane. And there are definitely players out there using this already. We see it all the time in top level competitive matches. So, you know, people may say that this is game breaking or this is going to change everything. It's probably not. It's probably not. It's already had whatever effect it's going to have, I believe, on the game. I do think, though, that console players need that additional button. And I really hope Motive do make some kind of client-side fix for that. It just would make sense to me. What else did I want to show you? Okay, so you don't have the dead drift to do a bounce. You can sheriff bounce with full power in your boost, full power engines. These are multiple bounces. Now, is the effect less pronounced? Yeah, sure. Is it still weird? Yeah, it's deeply weird considering what people thought the mechanics of the game were. And it's not the behavior people would expect when they're pursuing you. But again, in terms of what people have been saying about boost gasping and what they foresee as the problems of the game, it's all kind of irrelevant at this point. I don't need to boost gasp in a defender. I can hit as many drifts as I want in a row with all my power in engines just by doing sheriff bounces around the superstructure. And I can precisely align my drifts. Like, usually when I hit a drift, I screw it up. Like, I'll try and drift this way and I'll be slightly off target, and then I'm like, oh, I want to be over there. Using this technique, I can be, without having to hit my boost again. You know, it removes the penalty for me of screwing up where I'm targeting my boost, basically. So I'd love to hear what other people think about this, and I'd love to hear who else has been using this knowingly or perhaps unknowingly, just as a result of the way they're drifting already. I suspect there's a few of you out there, and yeah, feedback, tell me what you think, I'm sure there'll be a Reddit post, leave comments there, leave comments here, I'd really appreciate that. Let us know what you've been calling it as well. So we call it a bounce, Cavern's Angels, Fenkar called it a multidrift. I'd love to hear what the other names are for this technique. Thank you very much for watching.